January 21st, 1968. Thule Air Base, Greenland, 4:40 p.m. A B-52G Stratofortress, call sign Hobo 28, is on a routine airborne alert mission. Suddenly, a fire erupts in the cabin. The crew fights the flames, but it spreads. The pilot gives the order to abandon the aircraft. The bomber, carrying 4 B-28 nuclear bombs, spirals out of control. It slams into the sea ice of North Star Bay at over 300 miles per hour. The impact triggers a massive explosion of conventional high explosives in the weapons, rupturing the nuclear cores. A cloud of plutonium, uranium, and tritium billows across the frozen landscape. The fireball melts the ice, creating a crater of radioactive slush. The wreckage is scattered over a mile. 4 nuclear bombs are lost. 1 is never recovered. Thule Air Base was a linchpin of American Cold War strategy. Built in 1951, it sat 750 miles north of the Arctic Circle, a frozen outpost designed to detect Soviet bombers and missiles. By 1968, it housed a ballistic missile early warning system radar, a 10,000-foot runway, and hundreds of U.S. and Danish personnel. The base was a staging ground for Operation Chrome Dome, a continuous airborne alert mission where B-52s armed with nuclear weapons flew towards the Soviet Union, ready to strike at a moment's notice. A typical mission lasted 24 hours with 4 thermonuclear bombs on board. The crews were elite, the routine monotonous. Hobo 28 had taken off from Plattsburgh Air Force Base in New York. After a refueling over Labrador, it headed for the Baffin Bay orbit. Everything was routine until the cabin fire. The warning signs were subtle at first. The crew of Hobo 28 had been flying for over 10 hours. The cabin was cramped, the air dry. At around 3:30 p.m., the navigator, Captain John Demore, noticed a faint smell of smoke. He checked the cabin but found nothing. 20 minutes later, the co-pilot, Captain Leonard Svatenko, saw wisps of smoke from a heater vent near the navigator's station. He reported it to the pilot, Captain John Hogg. They ran the emergency checklist, but the smoke continued. They decided to divert to Thule for an emergency landing. But the fire was spreading faster than they could diagnose. By the time they called Thule Tower, the cabin was thick with smoke. The crew donned oxygen masks. The fire extinguisher was ineffective. The plane began to lose electrical power. The system failures cascaded. The decision that sealed the fate of Hobo 28 was made in a split second. With the fire raging and the plane losing control, Captain John Hogg gave the order, bail out. The crew of 7 ejected from the burning aircraft. But the co-pilot, Captain Leonard Svatenko, was killed during ejection. His seat malfunctioned. The remaining 6 crew members parachuted onto the dark ice below. The B-52, now pilotless, continued its descent. It was a matter of seconds. The impact with the ice was catastrophic. The 4 B-28 nuclear bombs, each with a yield of 1.1 megatons, were designed with a safety mechanism that prevented nuclear detonation without proper arming. But the conventional high explosives around the plutonium cores detonated on impact, scattering the radioactive material across the ice. The nuclear explosion did not occur, but the contamination was severe. The impact created a crater 50 feet wide, filled with burning jet fuel, melted ice, and radioactive debris. The conventional explosives in the bombs had detonated, rupturing the primary cores of plutonium and uranium. The secondary stages, containing lithium deuteride and more uranium, were also breached. A cloud of radioactive particles, including plutonium-239 with a half-life of 24,000 years, drifted over the base. The wreckage was scattered across a mile of ice. The tail section, with its radar and electronics, was intact. The forward fuselage was demolished. The 4 bombs were destroyed. 3 of the bomb casings were later located in the debris. The 4th was never found. It is believed to be buried under the ice, or perhaps lost in the bay. The contamination was immediate and widespread. The ice itself became a toxic waste dump. The immediate response was a scramble. Within hours, U.S. Air Force personnel from Thule arrived at the crash site. They were not wearing protective gear. Many had only winter clothing and respirators. They began collecting debris, shoveling contaminated ice, and trying to locate the missing bomb. The Danish government was notified, but the full extent of the contamination was not disclosed. The operation was codenamed Project Crested Ice. Over the next several months, hundreds of US and Danish workers, known as ice mice, were deployed to clean up the site. They worked in extreme cold, handling radioactive wreckage with bare hands. The contaminated ice was cut into blocks, loaded into containers, and shipped to the United States for disposal at the Savannah River site. Approximately 237,000 cubic feet of ice and debris were removed, but the cleanup was far from complete. As the cleanup progressed, the full horror became clear. The missing fourth bomb was the subject of a desperate search. Divers probed the icy waters of North Star Bay. Sonar scans revealed nothing. It is believed the bomb may have been buried by shifting ice or sank into the sediment. The contamination was not limited to the crash site. Plutonium particles were carried by wind and ice movement, spreading across the bay. The Danish government, initially assured that the cleanup was successful, later learned that significant contamination remained. In 1970, a Danish nuclear scientist, Jørgen Koch, discovered that the cleanup had missed large amounts of plutonium. He estimated that up to 2.5 kilograms of plutonium remained in the environment. The US initially disputed this, but later admitted that the cleanup was incomplete. The international community was alarmed. Denmark, a non-nuclear nation, had been exposed to a nuclear accident on its territory. The human cost of Thule is still being counted. Workers who participated in Project Crested Ice were exposed to plutonium. Many suffered from health problems, including cancer and respiratory diseases. The Danish government later established a compensation fund for workers who became ill. But the link to radiation exposure was difficult to prove. The US military did not keep thorough records of exposure levels. According to declassified documents, the official line was that the cleanup was safe and the risk minimal. But workers reported symptoms like nosebleeds, skin rashes, and fatigue shortly after the crash. One worker, Hans Nielsen, developed leukemia and died in 1975. His family blamed the cleanup. In 1995, a Danish study found that workers had elevated levels of plutonium in their urine. The contamination also affected the local Inuit population, who relied on fishing and hunting in the area. Studies found elevated levels of radioactive isotopes in marine life. The cover-up began almost immediately. The US military classified the accident as a broken arrow, a term for a nuclear weapons incident. The details were kept secret. The Danish government was told the cleanup was complete and the area safe. But in 1987, declassified documents revealed that the US had knowingly left contaminated debris on the ice. The Danish government had not been fully informed. In 1995, a Danish parliamentary inquiry criticized the US for its secrecy. The US admitted that the cleanup was not as thorough as claimed. The missing fourth bomb remains an open question. In 2009, a British documentary team searched for the bomb using sonar and found an object that could be the weapon, but it was never confirmed. The Pentagon maintains that the bomb was destroyed in the crash. But many believe it lies intact beneath the ice, a ticking clock for future generations. The legacy of Thule is a cautionary tale. The accident led to the end of Operation Chrome Dome and the Airborne Alert Program. It also raised questions about the safety of nuclear weapons in the Arctic. The cleanup cost an estimated $9.2 million in 1968 dollars. But the environmental cost is incalculable. Climate change is now a concern. The ice sheet that holds the remaining contamination is melting. If the missing bomb is intact, it could be released into the sea. The US and Denmark have monitored the site, but the long-term plan is unclear. Thule remains an active base, now called Patuffik Space Base. The accident is a reminder that nuclear disasters are not just about meltdowns. They are about decisions made in seconds, secrets kept for decades, and the invisible poison that lingers for millennia. Subscribe to Nuclear Disasters for more stories of human error and radioactive consequence.